Hello. To clarify, and finishing from the modern day book by me, Reverend Susan MeeLing, um, in chapter 1, I did do the previous reading of pages 14 to 25. I did miss some information, so I'm going to clarify that for page 24 and 25 through the next pages. So I wound up being put on restriction, and at the time that I had seen 3 soldiers that were stationed with me at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I was on restriction from the Article 15. The Article 15 happened because I drank alcohol the first week that I was stationed at Fort Sam Houston and Medical Hold before it became Warrior Transition Unit and JBSA. And I admitted it because I was asked, and can only tell the truth. That Master Sergeant, by the way, was completely like, wait, what did you just say? And I was like, you asked me if I drank alcohol. And then I had to explain that I didn't know that there was an age limit. And I even told him about the discussion with Jolliffe and Webker about not knowing that beer was considered alcohol or the restrictions on that. And I had been made fun of for asking where the mead was and then having to explain mead. But I had gone to CID in reference to that. I'd also gotten an Article 15, not just for underage drinking, but because of going to a rave, and apparently in the Army, I'm sure it's probably all across the Armed Forces branches for the United States of America, you're not allowed to go to raves. I didn't know that. So I had gone only to dance, because I like to dance, and I was essentially, I guess it's called roofying twice. I got roofied twice. The first time was because I thought I had my medication, but I guess I forgot it. I mean, it makes sense, I didn't remember it, but my headaches and migraines were so bad that they wouldn't take me back to Fort Sam Houston. The female who was in charge of the group, her name that she went by was Princess Jasmine. She lived in an apartment complex that had a wooden fence on the first floor that met the back of a wrought iron fence for either another apartment complex or a housing area, which I guess is one and the same, but whatever. And her husband was a police officer. And then the group of soldiers that were in the same room area of the barracks as Jolliffe and Webker were on the first floor that was above the orderly rooms. Were the ones that introduced me to Princess Jasmine, is what she went by. And then she got upset because I said that she didn't look like a princess to me. She got a little upset about that. And then she had to explain that it was a nickname, and it's like, yeah, but you still don't look like a princess, so whatever. But wouldn't take me back to Fort Sam Houston, didn't remember to bring my medications. I had asked for Advil, because that was the only thing I could remember. She did actually have Advil, but it wasn't Advil, and Princess Jasmine gave me 2 pills that looked like Advil. They were the brown color, with the word Advil on it, and they had the candy-coated flavor. Then during the actual rave with the DJ group that sold their CDs at the store that I got the ticket from, had lobster claws with gold around it or yellow around it. The ticket was, I think, golden with the lobster claws on it. Whatchamacallit, during the rave I was trying to dance. One of the guys who was friends with Princess Jasmine, but was a civilian, a little bit taller than me. Princess Jasmine was about my height, a little bit shorter. Dirty blonde hair for Princess Jasmine, broader shoulders but thinner frame, and she wore one of those triangle bikinis to the rave thing. And then I think it was called Lobster Fest. It might have been. But anyway. Or the broil, something of that nature, whatever. And the male was taller, thinner, mushroom haircut, dirty blonde, brown hair, both of them, or brown eyes, both of them. Whatchamacallit, at the time in 2000, the male had more of a muscular physique-ish, and he was wearing big baggy pants, and they had wide bell-bottom type thing, like no tightness in the pants at all. That guy had checked on me during the rave and gave me 2 pills that looked like tulips, purple like a Flintstone chewable vitamin, did taste like it when you chewed it, or at least when I did. And then I woke up at a hospital, apparently Breckenridge Hospital in Austin. And then the next thing I remember, a male that had a shaved head, lighter complexion, broader shoulders, more muscular frame, wearing scrubs, but, you know, hospital. He said he was supposed to go to that rave that night, but a female called in. And then the next thing I remember, I was in the back of the first sergeant at the time's car, a golden color, but like with glitter in the paint, and a tan interior 4-door. I think it was either an Acura or an Infiniti or a Honda. I don't think it was a Toyota, but a lot of the body styles have kind of jelly beaned together. And her daughter, probably either middle school, like 7th, 8th grade, or high school, no more than 10th grade. She's very young looking. Her mom was from Puerto Rico, but first sergeant. And she had, prior to being stationed at Fort Sam Houston, been a first sergeant at a basic training unit before she was at Fort Sam in 2000. I apparently got in trouble with the group that was introduced to me that I met through Jolliffe and Webker, of the group that was in the same housing area on the first floor above the orderly room in the center section, with a little kind of dip in the building that came out when looking from above. And whatchamacallit, got an Article 15 for going to the rave, got an Article 15 for underage drinking, and got an Article 15 not for being roofied, but because I had drugs in my system, even though apparently that's what it's called. The medical hold unit guys were kind of, oh my god, because the amount of drugs that was in my system from being roofied that I survived, apparently enough to put an elephant down. But I survived for just one of the medications, and there were over 20 in total when they did my blood work. But Captain Beer had given me the Article 15. Who became commander after Captain Beer left he got promoted to Captain Morning. My Captain Cupcake, not your Captain Cupcake. Captain Cupcake. Kind of looked like Tom Cruise and Captain Cupcake. Anyway, he went from enlisted to officer. And those cherubim that I'm going to be describing later in the book, they were in his state. And he was in the cavalry, and Captain Cupcake was not the type of guy you messed around with. Just going to leave it at that. My Captain Cupcake. My Captain Cupcake. But anyway, He was there along with Watson and Baber and Moreno and a few others. And I was given the Article 15, even though I, E because I didn't graduate basic training. I mean, I was technically an E1, but didn't graduate basic training. Got an Article 15. They couldn't demote me because I was what rank I was. So I was on extra duty. I had my pay docked for 3 months. I had to check in every hour on the hour from 9:30 to 2:30 in the morning, because I had in my Article 15, it literally said private home is on restriction until private home can act like a soldier. And so by the time that I saw the 3 soldiers who were from basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, they were kind of like, Hom. And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, do you remember us? And I was like, no. Who are you? And they had asked if I was stationed at Fort Sill. And I said, yeah, I was. I had my head injury there on Palm Sunday. What about it? And they were like, what? Because apparently none of the females had discussed what happened at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I understood why. I mean, they did, all of the females that were in that basic training unit, they did see what happened. We were all being smoked by the drill sergeant at the same time, but they all were told to stand at parade rest. And when the drill sergeant came at me and smoked me longer, they probably know how long I was actually smoked before being thrown into the metal part of the bunk. I explained that to the 3 male soldiers, and they told me that very few females, if any, graduated from that basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Whatchamacallit, a lot of them either chaptered out or washed out, or were put out. I kind of understand why. Again, they did see what happened to me. And I apologize to the Senate, Congress, and governors of the state of Oklahoma, because I just realized I probably should have contacted you guys back then about that, but I didn't know. But if that's needed for more testimony, and now there's the video. Not being rude, just... Anyway, the 3 male soldiers said that they remembered speaking with me during 0 week. And they were like, hey, why did you join basic training again? And I said, well, what I remembered from New Jersey. As far as the 1993 attack to the World Trade Center. And I told them that I felt like the dream that I had was kind of cut up and it didn't make sense to me. And so part of the reason for joining was because I knew I had to be in the military to be able to do anything and prevent like the whole thing from occurring, because in my dream I dreamt back in 1992 or 1991, like right before I got sick, so I think it was 1992. I dreamt that what is called the World Trade Center had an explosion from the bottom, but then there were airplanes that flew into the top, and I smelled fertilizer. And the 3 guys were just like, what do you mean? And I was like, that was what my dream was, but there wasn't the airplanes. In 1993, it was just the explosion. I don't know if there was the fertilizer smell, but in my dream there was. And so the 3 soldiers and I talked for a while. The bus was late. Ironically, I was hoping for it to be late so that way I could finish talking with them. And they asked me a bunch of questions about what I remembered from New Jersey beyond just that. And so I told them essentially part of what I told the tech sergeant at the Air Force later on when 9/11 actually did happen. Irony. But those three soldiers and I spoke for a while, and I was like, you guys need to stay safe. Try to remember, a lot. Gave them a few pointers here and there. And then the bus showed up, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. Later on is what it is when it comes to Article 15 and that fullness at Fort Sam Houston. I had also wandered off a few times. They couldn't really give me an Article 15 for wandering off and missing formation. That they could have, but not. And so that was another reason. Like, I understood, despite so many people being like, why are you not fighting that? And it's like, because I got lost a bunch of times. Like, I told the soldiers in medical hold what I saw, and they were like, no, there's no place on post that has that. And then the building that I was in on Fort Sam apparently had not been in use whatsoever for like years. But I was able to describe the interior. I was like, no, I was in there. Telling you. I mean, there was tape here and this there, but that is what it is. Anyway, so I told those 3 different soldiers that before the bus showed up, and then went back to medical hold. Irony of being in the state of Texas now. Not a bad thing, just one of those, what a weird coinky dink. Anyway, especially after seeing the numbers for Fort Sam Houston. But the next part is going to living at Lincoln Green Apartments, and that would be where I met my now dead ex-husband. I'd seen him in 2 days from when the time he died, and no contact with him from that. But that's a whole other ball. It was a really bad marriage. Anyway, I met his friend Terry, who he had met at ISR. And Terry was living in Lincoln Green Apartments. Terry's friend that he had known said that he was a former Navy SEAL. I think his name was John. And he was the manager at Chili's. Tried having a job there, and it didn't work out because I was pregnant with my son at the time. Terry's wife, Lisa, thought she had gotten me the job, which she may have gotten the commission check, but she didn't get me the job because she had never talked to John about me. She didn't even know me. I never met her until I actually started working at Chili's. So, just saying, you can't really get me a job if, never spoke with you. But anyway, one day when I came in, I had seen Lisa sitting on John's lap, and they were eating together, feeding each other, and I was just like, do you have that type of marriage with Terry? Because I don't think so. Like, Terry does not seem like the type of guy who would have that type of a marriage. He might, I don't know. I don't want to assume anything. But when I got back to the apartment, I told my now dead ex-husband, but then husband, that he needed to call Terry. And Robert was like, no, I'm not going to call him. I don't care what you saw. And I was like, no, you need to tell Terry. Like, I'm not trying to start shit. I just want to make sure that Terry's okay. Because, like, it doesn't feel right. 3 days of conversations and trying to get Robert to contact Terry. Robert finally contacted Terry. Terry was like, oh, Lisa left. She told me that she was cheating with John. And I was like, so we need to go over and make sure Terry's okay. Went over to his apartment because both lived in Lincoln Green Apartments, off of Braesview, I think, and got Terry some pizza, And then him and Robert got some beer, and I went to work at Chili's. I got in trouble at Chili's that day for telling my then husband about it, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, again, Lisa is the one that left Terry. I mean, and who are you to tell me what I can and can't say? Freedom of speech, freedom of expression. You say you were in the Navy at one point, so you know what the constitutional rights are. But John threw a fit, and I was like, I don't really care. I'm like, you can't tell me what I can and can't talk about. Apparently, Lisa made up some bullshit because realistically, duh. Obviously, I didn't have that much time to speak about that. And so, after I got off of work, I went to Walmart, picked up a bunch of stuff because Lisa cleared out the entire apartment. She took all of the furniture that Terry bought, all of the stuff in the kitchen, like everything that Terry bought, she took anyway. She even took the freaking washer and dryer out of the apartment complex, and that was standard for the apartment complex, which was just like, how pathetic of a female are you? You're the one who cheated on Terry, so, you know, I'm just saying. But anyway, there was a little bit of alcohol that they had consumed because they bought more. And when I showed up, they were planning to raid a crack house because who were they going to call? And I was like, should leave at this point because he's so drunk that he'll just fall asleep. And yeah, that's a lot of alcohol because Terry had showed me a picture that he had on the wall that he wasn't allowed to have because Lisa didn't like it in the decor. And it was some guy named Dirty Harry or something like that, and had a signature on it. And he was like, do you know who that guy is? And I'm like, no, why would I know who that guy is? I mean, maybe I've met him before, but I don't, like, recognize him. And the guy was like, that's Dirty Harry. And I'm like, who's Dirty Harry? And he's like, haven't you seen the movie Dirty Harry? And I was like, I've only seen one movie, maybe two, since waking up from the coma. And I don't remember one of them being called Dirty Harry. And so talked with Terry about my head injury on Palm Sunday. And it was still, the next, it was in 2000 because it was 2001 that happened. And Terry was just kind of like, how do you not know that? And I was like, because I wasn't allowed to watch movies that weren't above a certain rating. And so if it was above PG-13 before I was 13, I probably didn't see it. If it was PG-13 when I was 13, I had to get permission to see it. And then, like, if it was R-rated, I only recently turned 18 at that time. So, you know, not to be a dick, Terry, but, you know, what's the big deal? And he looked at me and he was like, oh my God, okay, there you go. That's that. And I was just like, what's the big deal? And he's like, oh my God, like, and he was really drunk, and I was like, okay, whatever. So, left. And then there were some issues at Chili's that just wouldn't stop because of Lisa being well over dramatic. And I was just like, okay. But when they started bumping into my belly, when I was pregnant with hot plates, it was one of those, I'm about ready to beat every one of you up. So instead of beating each of you waiters and waitresses up because you keep bumping into my pregnant belly, I'm just going to quit because I don't have fucking patience for this and I don't want to deliver my child in prison. So I hate all of you fucking motherfuckers that bumped into my pregnant belly, and I hope you suffer because I hate you. Personal thing, you just don't bump into a pregnant woman's belly, like, duh. And I'd already gone to the emergency room a bunch of times because of my now dead ex-husband hitting me in my stomach. But that is what it is. Anyway, so next, yeah, so the aspects of the problems with Lisa and her friends. Terry might have remembered that because I had gotten him a bunch of necessities for his apartment. I got him some drinking cups and some plates and, just disposable stuff because I didn't know what type of stuff he actually liked. Got him some towels. I got him brown towels because I was like, you're a bachelor. Probably reminded him a little bit of the army at the same time, but that is what it is. The last part of chapter 1 is about 9/11, and when that happened, I was in the townhouse at Songbird Apartments. I had just gotten my son to sleep. I had delivered him on 2 September 2001. I had 7 days of labor. Nobody is jealous of that. And if you are, you shouldn't be. It was a very violent pregnancy, mainly because of the way I was treated, but also the delivery itself. There was a nurse who, on the monitor, saw that I was going through a contraction and then was like, oh, let me go and do a blood pressure cuff reading while you're in the middle of a contraction. I was like, it's probably going to be a high blood pressure for going through a contraction. Might want to wait. And the female got all upset because I told her how to do her job. And I was like, I don't think it takes a head injury to figure that out, bitch. And then she got mad because I called her a bitch. And it was just one of those, well, you see that I'm and this is while I'm having a contraction, mind you. And so, you see that I'm in the middle of a fucking contraction, why the hell would you freaking put a blood pressure cuff on me? The reading will probably be off, duh. And the female got all bitchy and put the blood pressure cuff on me, even though I was trying to get my arm away from her. And she was shorter, heavier stock, broader shoulders, dirty blonde, kind of curly hair, paler complexion, and kind of had a poof here. And whatchamacallit, she called me a bunch of names, and it's like, I'm having a contraction. And at that point, I had already been in labor for 3 or 4 days. So excuse me and dealing with headaches and migraines as well at the same time. Nobody is jealous of my labor and delivery. Nobody. And so, not any normal person at least. And no male would be jealous of having to be in that room, whether as a doctor or as, but whatever, nobody's jealous. And if you are, I'm telling you, you're stupid. And if I'm telling you you're stupid, you're pretty freaking stupid. I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to 2nd grade math. I'm just saying, it shouldn't take a head injury to figure out that I should have been able to wait for that blood pressure cuff until after the contraction, but that female didn't want to listen, and when she got in my face while the blood pressure cuff was going off, while I'm in the middle of a contraction, she was surprised. So for some reason that I kicked her from the pain, and she went flying across the room. It was almost like a cartoon, because if there wasn't a wall there, she would have kept going. I had a good arc on that, thinking back to that now. I'm just... because, so pretend this is, the ceiling right here, okay? And, right here is where the bed was for where I was in labor. So, here, I kicked her this way, and, she hit up here. Her freaking head hit here. So, if it wasn't for that wall there, she still would have kept going up, and then slowly arced downward. I had some good distance on that kick. I'm just, I'm not trying to be mean on that, but that's Not that that should happen, but again, I was in labor for 3 or 4 days by that point. Give me a break. And that was a pretty good kick. I just anyway, she got upset because I kicked her for putting a blood pressure cuff on me in the middle of a contraction after being in labor for 3 or 4 days. Better be glad there were no implements nearby that I could have easily used. But anyway, so my son, James, born on 2 September 2001, after 3 or 4 days in the hospital total, because my son was in ICU for a while, and I had developed an infection after being in labor that long, 9/11 happened. I had just gotten James to sleep, and had him swaddled up. I called it an eggerito because of the way I would fold the blanket around him. I'm half Chinese. Chinese people eat egg rolls. It's not a racist thing. It's reality. Or spring rolls. Either way. But my now dead ex-husband, but nonetheless my son's father, he was half Dominican. Dominicans eat burritos. I'm not racist when I say that. It's my son, by the way, and it was a cute nickname, and it was a joke because it was cute because of the way he was swaddled up. I did that with my daughter, too. I called her my little eggerito. I don't care. And I got called racist a whole bunch of times. That's like, really get over yourselves. Like, I can call myself what I call myself. I can call my children what I call my children. If you don't like it, I don't care. Freedom of expression on top of that, as far as, constitutional rights, but, and I wasn't being mean. If you look at the way, like, I had them swaddled, you would look at them and be like, that's how, like, egg rolls and burritos are folded, so, the blankets. But anyway, James was finally asleep. My now dead ex-husband, but then husband, runs up the stairs, and I sat up real quick because that was really bad marriage. Second of sound, what's going on? And I was like, what are you doing back from college? Why are you not in class? And he said, don't you know what happened? And I was like, no, what happened? And the TV that was off turned on without any touching of it. And the only way I can describe it is like that Photoshop thing where you take one picture and you put it over another, but in a video way. And I saw my dream in full. I saw the explosion from the bottom, but I knew that wasn't there. But I saw the airplanes going in. Or I saw the second one go in when the TV turned on. And while my now dead ex-husband is yelling at me for being upset that he was at the apartment from college instead of being at college, I just spoke. And I couldn't help it. Like, my headaches were what they were. The fact that I was being berated the way I was did not matter. The conversation that happened after that is what it is. But I couldn't help myself. I just had to speak. And what I do remember saying was, I hope they ground every plane as quick as they possibly can. I hope that whoever is able, if they find out what happened as far as those two airplanes, that they're able to make a phone call to their loved ones. Hopefully they can get through. If not, hopefully they can leave a message on the machine and then do what needs to be done to prevent that from occurring to any other building. And if there's any way for law enforcement or whatever to take a plane out of the sky, then it's less damage and less death if that's the case. And whatever you believe spiritually is whatever you believe spiritually. The only way I can use words to explain it is I felt wings just shoot out of my back. And I hadn't had that since before my head injury, that sort of feeling. I had it a whole bunch of times since. But whatever happens, I don't really know how to describe the words or with words when I feel a either new set of wings shoot out or a pair that needs to go out to do something. But it almost felt like after the wings shot out, words, by the way, at the edge of one set of wings, it felt like there was a grabbing and a pulling, like tug of war type of thing, like you're holding on to something and trying to pull it back. And slow it down, I guess. And other wings and feathers of some of those wings, because multiple types, went where they went. There was one wing in particular, just one, that went over someone that was holding onto a small little bear that had a t-shirt on. It was red, but it had pink and white letters, and it was a lighter brown color bear with different colored ears in the center, and on the hands and feet or paws, whatever, hiding underneath the desk. And it just, the one wing kind of just covered the entire desk. Another wing that had just feathers. The feathers went to poke flowers that were nearby. And then of those same wings to make the flowers kind of like be the focus point for the people who saw that. It was more of a gossamer type of glittery look, like they thought that they saw glitter. Like literally just big pieces of glitter just floating. But it was just a wing. Or a net, or however you want to put it, for them to just look at and not be affected in that moment. Not that they weren't affected, but giving them kind of a focus point before everything else continued. And there were a few other wings that did what they did. And then as far as the stuff that went into the ocean, the nearby individuals and whatever ... you want to put, you could hypothetically say that my fins went out from my mermaid tail. And then a few more people shot up to the surface to assist where they could, because they heard my call. And a few other things. And then I dealt with a conversation from my now dead ex-husband while I kept a little cloak over my son so he didn't have to see or hear it at the time. And when that conversation was over, I went to the shower to clean off the blood from myself. And then I got my son and I got the diaper bag ready, and I went across the street or the parking lot to the office because I knew that there was a tech sergeant that was going to be getting back from basic training at Lackland. And I had hoped, and thankfully he didn't listen to the radio or see the TV on his way back from Lackland to Songbird Apartments. He walked in and I was just like, hey, you didn't listen to the radio, right? And he was like, no. And I'm like, good, get yourself a cup of coffee. I'm going to get a Sprite soda and let's get a cookie, and we're going to go outside and we're going to go talk for a little bit because I need to talk with you. And the guy was just like, okay. And so the tech sergeant and I went out to the front area of the apartment complex, sat on the stairs, and I explained to him stuff I remembered from New Jersey during the 93 attack of what the different guys had to do at the time. And I said, I know you don't want to believe me right now. I get that. I get you don't want to believe me. But you need to empty out the back of your truck. I know you got a bunch of tools. Among other stuff, they're going to be doing checks of every vehicle. You've got a guy that's going to need to get out of the basic training area, and he's going to need to leave quickly. And you got to be the one that is able to get on post the quickest to relieve him, because you know you can't switch post until you get the relief. So you need to go, and you need to do this. And while that tech sergeant and I were speaking, I had told him a few things to inform the soldiers of his basic training unit, as well as the other tech sergeants, because it's apparently what they call them in the Air Force. And then when he would speak later with certain other people, so that way he didn't get in trouble, let them know who gave you the information, so that way if they have any questions, they can ask me, no problem. And a mailman from the USPS had showed up early. He usually showed up around noon instead of 10 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, hey, I need to speak with you while we're at it. And he was like, what's going on? And I'm told him what happened. And he was just like, oh my God. And I was like, so you need to let the post office know to start screening stuff. And, if you got to get extra dogs in there to sniff, because when the 93 attack happened, there were a bunch of guys in D.C. who wound up dealing with certain things. And so to try to prevent that stuff, this is some suggestions for you guys to stay safe all across the board each way. And then a maintenance guy showed up and spoke with him. I was like, yeah, you're going to have to deal with the females crying. I can't. I gave suggestions, go give blood, go donate plasma, go buy food and send it to the location that's affected. Go to church and pray, or whatever you believe. It doesn't matter. Something to help them. Excuse me. And I was basically told that I was stupid for making those suggestions, and I'm like, you know what? Fine. Speak with the males. I grew up as a tomboy anyway, playing with males and speaking with males. They understand much easier for whatever reason. I understand that, emotions get involved. It's not that males don't have emotions, but sometimes males can, their emotions and, pay attention to the details. And, yeah, emotions are important. I don't deny that. But there are times where, the emotions need to be put in check and, stuff needs to get done. So, I'm not saying all females are like that. I usually got along with females that had a similar mindset where it was like, okay, something needs to happen, let's get it taken care of, deal with the emotions later on because there's more important stuff to happen. And so, not saying emotions aren't important, those types of females understand. And so, usually they're in the medical field. But anyway, not all. Military, law enforcement too, but, usually something where it's like, okay, there's an emergency, let's focus on the emergency and then take care of everything else. So, after speaking with those guys, I went back over to the apartment and turned on the TV, and, then I found out that the Pentagon was hit. And thankfully, it was only one side that got hit. Thankfully, none of the cars went flying, because they should have. But that would be that gossamer type of look, as well as some clouds. Depends on which car they were in, because if they were, depending on the distance, depended whether they saw the glittery stuff or the kind of smoke stuff. And apparently it didn't do as much damage, so I guess that's probably the tug-of-war feeling that I felt, I guess. Which is good. But yeah, so that's the end of chapter 1 of the modern day book by me, Reverend Susan MeeLing. Get it on Amazon along with the other books. I'll post the link. I did try to warn people. But yeah, the news, before I go, because I didn't actually write about that, the news, it was watching that and listening to that. It was one of those, you guys, I know you want to cry, and you have every right to want to cry, but I promise, if you just make it through just a little bit longer, jobs that you'll wind up getting will be so much more than where you're at, and you won't have to deal with that same sort of stuff. Just hold back those tears just a little bit longer, and once you're behind the wall, go ahead, but just remain composed, just enough. I understand, really do, but just a little bit. And then there were reports about people saying that the 9/11 coverage was too much, and that was just one of those. Then change the channel if you don't want to watch it. There are how many channels on TV? I mean, seriously, there's some stuff going on and you want to complain. Yeah, just no, I don't want to hear, no, there's no excuse for that. At all. So, that is what it is. But thankfully they were able to push on and do what they needed to. And as one last closing note, because of the head injury happening on Palm Sunday in 2000 and the length of the damage and the coma and stuff like that, I did vote for President George W. Bush. I talked about that in Medical Hold. Not watching the news, nobody discussed politics at the base, and not presidential at least, at the base, and I was like, nope, telling you, this guy, whoever, like his name Bush, like he's got to be the one who is in there, because he's going to have a vice president that will handle what needs to be handled. They're going to deal with some stuff, but no, got to be this guy. Got to be this guy. No offense to whoever he's running against. This is the guy who has to do it, because he's got the background and the understanding, and he's got people that will help him to understand this stuff. Whereas, like, no offense to whoever he was running against, I would guesstimate he, like, when 9/11 happened, I'm so glad I'm not president, came out of his mouth. Probably, I would guesstimate, at some point in time. But anyway, for as much garbage as former President George W. Bush, the second one, got with former Vice President Dick Cheney, no, they were the ones who needed to do that. And despite, they're human, they did make some mistakes. There's no denying that. And they still did better. And what would you have done if you were in charge and you actually knew everything that was going on? Probably would have a whole different perspective and be a whole bunch more respectful to those who are in elected office. By a lot. Not forgetting law enforcement and fire department and emergency medical services, and especially the military. So I was just going to throw that out there on that closing point. You guys have a good one.